Young professional woman Sarah gives birth to a newborn baby. Problem is, there's an ancient boogeyman spirit who tries to take the child away. Luckily, Sarah's got Elder Ruth in her corner to give her some exposition dumping and means to tell this spirit to piss off. It's an Aussie attempt at a Blumhouse structure in the Moogai.
Hello there, you loose units, and welcome back to another episode of Spicy Boy Reviews. I'm, of course, your host, Andrew Iles. That's right, The Moogai, written and directed by John Bell, who's known for directing and writing the short film version of this, and of course coming back to expand the story into feature length. This sounds familiar. We meet law professional Mummy Poo's Sarah, who's just got a promotion and is expecting a newborn second child. What could possibly go wrong? Turns out she goes into an emergency early labour and is rushed to hospital. And straight after giving birth, she passes away on the gurney. Luckily, the doctors quickly bring her back to life.
Wake me up, wake me up inside. Wake up, wake me up inside.
And hopefully nothing has followed her back from purgatory. But wouldn't you know it? Turns out she gets a hitchhiker that follows her back that is an ancient boogeyman spirit by the name of the Moogai. Then it begins to come after her newborn baby. But what is the Moogai, I hear you ask, and how is she going to know how to tackle it? Well, wouldn't you know it? Her birth mother Ruth knows exactly what this spirit is and what it wants. She tries to give help to Sarah, but Sarah's having none of it! You see, Ruth is Sarah's birth mother, and Sarah was taken away from her forcefully back when she was a child and adopted by a middle-class white family and raised Catholic. As subtle as a sledgehammer movie, Sarah is not the most welcoming of Ruth, and Ruth respectively has a distrust of white people hooey. Put your bookmark in, audience, because we're going to come back to this later. Of course, you can expect what happens next with the plot. Sarah starts hearing and seeing things that aren't necessarily there. What she thinks is her daughter is creeping around the house at night with her eyes rolled in the back of her head, whispering creepy shit. And Sarah slowly starts to unravel and everyone around her questioning her sanity. Not Ruth though, no. Ruth is playing the waiting game. She knows exactly what's happening, but she's waiting in the corner until Sarah has had her wits' end and she can incorporate Ruth's help. Because see, Ruth knows there's about an hour runtime left of the film. This sounds familiar. After a while, things of course go tits up and Sarah installs the help of ruthless aggression and she takes on the Moogai head on. It's easy to see that this film was adapted from a short movie, as it has a great concept. However, it does feel like there's a bit of padding going on and the film gets rather repetitive, even at that brisk runtime of 1 hour and 26 minutes. The acting is okay, it's alright, but however there was some very cringy lines here and there. There was also some nice subtle CGI sprinkled throughout the film, which is great to see because we've got some magnificent special effects artists here in Australia and it's great to see their work done well on screen. As I'm sure you picked up on the hint of this review, this film feels heavily like a Blumhouse movie, with its look, concept and pacing. Also, the creature of the Moogai is hardly ever seen until the very end, and when it is front row and centre, it's very simple. Ultimately, it's a contortionist, flexy, skinny dude running around on all fours with some white paint over his body with some prosthetics over his face. Not a terrible thing by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I love tangible practical effects. However, if I'm brutally honest, I will say that it felt very low budget in its execution, which would not be a complaint whatsoever if the film didn't sort of market itself or have that look of a big budget movie. And this film getting sort of the stamp of approval from Screen Australia. If this was sort of a GoFundMe film, incredibly low-budget indie horror, then, you'd probably accept it. And of course, I hope you're wearing a helmet with how heavy-handed this film is with its metaphor. It's painfully clear that this film is about the stolen generation, and even as a plot point with the character of Ruth, especially in the opening scene. And for those of you who don't know, in Australia between the 1910s and the 1970s, the government forcibly removed Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their homes. And they placed them into white households. It was based on this assimilation policy to make their lives better or more improved, as they were trying to, as I aforementioned, assimilate these children into white society. Ultimately, it was a policy to wipe out Indigenous and First Nation peoples' culture and heritage. And for lack of a better term, it was a way to breed out Indigenous culture. Horrible stuff. It's a very dark part of Australian history and a very contentious issue, especially to this day, and rightfully so. There's been so many films, books, poems and plays written on the subject, but I don't know if I've ever seen a horror film version of it. And here we are. I haven't seen the short film version of this movie, and what I can read online, it sounds pretty good. This film is a classic example of taking a really cool creative short film concept and expanding it into an hour and a half. And I'm not 100% sure, but it really felt like this film was coming from an angle of lefty, upper middle class white people funding bodies. I could be wrong, but that's what it felt like. You know, as an attempt to right the wrongs of the past. And in doing so, came across as rather bland. As aforementioned, it feels like some studio in Australia giving a Blumhouse film a go. I was excited about seeing this film, I'm not going to lie, but ultimately I was pretty mad, I was a bit disappointed in it. It's not a terrible film, don't get me wrong, it's fine. I just wish that I liked it more. You know, we've had two banger Aussie films in recent past. We've had The Babadook and Talk to Me. And for me, I just wish this film was on that level. However, there was one scene in a school that really had me engaged. And I was all on board with the Sarah character for all of it. But then, of course, it fell back into Blumhouse territory. Anyway, guys, that's my cheeky little review of the Moogai. Write down below if you've seen it. What are your thoughts on it? But more importantly, what is your favourite Aussie horror? And of course, if you've made it this far into the episode, please give me a thumbs up because your love and support keeps me going, because I just love movies and I assume you do as well. And of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe icon because I give an episode weekly. And I'll see you back here next week for the next review, but until then, stay spooky, kids.